this notion, I think it's important to get into some of this, given what's going on today and given the lies and the propaganda you're being fed, including within the Republican Party, of jurisdiction, that under the 14th Amendment, that a pregnant woman from some other part of the world, a foreigner, comes here, gives birth, and then that child is automatically an American citizen, and that that's compelled by the 14th Amendment. No, it's not. No, it's not in the least. Professor Edward Erler gave testimony many years ago, almost 20 years ago, 17 years ago. And he's right about this, and I discussed this independently myself in Men in Black, before the House Subcommittee on Immigration and Claims. And he points to Senator Jacob Howard. Senator Jacob Howard was the primary author of the Citizenship Clause in the 14th Amendment. That clause that defined who falls within the, quote, jurisdiction of the United States, unquote. And Howard said, among other things, listen to this, every person born within the limits of the United States and subjects of their jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law and national law a citizen of the United States. This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. It settles the great question of citizenship and removes all doubt as to what persons are or are not citizens of the United States. So obviously the recently freed slaves born in the United States are citizens of the United States, and that really was the purpose of the 14th Amendment. But Indians, Native Americans, were not generally considered citizens of the United States, and it's explained as part of this logic under the 14th Amendment, because they were also citizens of tribes. Citizens of tribes. It wasn't an attack on Native Americans, because many of them didn't want to be citizens of the United States. And so they had to address this in the 14th Amendment. So all persons born in the United States are not subject to any foreign power, excluding Indians not taxed. So Indian tribes were considered their own nations, and you couldn't have dual allegiance to a tribe and to the United States. That was the thinking at the time. But that's a side point. What that does is it gives us a better understanding of what they meant by jurisdiction when they adopted the 14th Amendment in Congress and ratified it in the states. So much of the debate about jurisdiction centered on the status of Indians. Now, in the case of the children born to aliens illegally in the United States, their citizenship would follow the citizenship of their parents, or be determined by the laws of the country in which the parents hold citizenship. That was the accepted norm at the time. A baby born in the United States of diplomats from, say, England doesn't become an American citizen. Or somebody traveling in the United States from France who has a baby in the United States, that didn't confer citizenship on the baby. That was understood at the time. It has nothing to do with the 14th Amendment. And the fact that illegal aliens have violated laws of the United States precludes any possibility that they can be properly said to be within the jurisdiction of the United States, because the aliens surely have demonstrated that they don't believe themselves to be the subject of the laws of the United States, having violated them, or are only partially subject to them. So contrary to a currently fashionable argument, Erler makes this point, the denial of birthright citizenship to children of illegal aliens doesn't punish the children for the sins of the parents, because the children's never had a birthright to citizenship in the first place. It'd be a different matter for the children born of legal aliens who've been admitted by the laws of the United States, whether their children will be citizens at birth or upon the attainment of citizenship by their parents. That's up to Congress to determine. 14th Amendment doesn't confer it. But illegal aliens, there was a time when it was flat out understood. No way. And this doesn't require a constitutional amendment to withhold citizenship from children born in the United States of illegal alien parents. It is the proper understanding, the original understanding of the 14th Amendment. And think about it logically. Remember, the purpose of the 14th Amendment was to ensure that newly released slaves were treated as citizens of the United States for all purposes, in every state, period. It had nothing to do with conferring citizenship on the children of foreigners born in the United States because they happen to be in the United States. Let me emphasize it this way. It's not physical presence that's the determining factor. It's political presence that's the determining factor. That is to say, just because you're here and a pregnant woman and you have a baby, you cannot confer citizenship on your own baby. Flying into here from, say, China, we've heard about this, or crossing the border from Mexico, being a Guatemalan, what have you. The framers of the 14th Amendment, the ratifiers of the 14th Amendment, wouldn't believe what's going on here. Well, it says persons, and it says jurisdiction, but it means something from an originalist point of view. That foreigners cannot confer citizenship on their babies simply by coming into the United States. Or you can't have accidental citizenship, where diplomats or people visiting the United States have their babies here, and then they're automatically American citizens because of their presence. That is, presence, physical presence is not enough. You have to submit to the political jurisdiction of the United States, and even more, you have to be invited into the political jurisdiction of the United States. Physical presence was never enough. This is only in the last 50 years or so, give or take. So now you know more about this notion of birthright citizenship and jurisdiction than most other people in this country. And yet this whole concept has been destroyed. See, all the barriers are being destroyed, physical and legal, because the attack is on citizenship. The attack is on community. The attack is on the civil society. When you hear Republicans or so-called libertarians on radio, on TV, politicians speak out as if they're the ones who are compassionate and they're promoting humanity, I ask you to look around. Is that what they're doing? Is that what they've succeeded in doing? When they talk about comprehensive immigration reform, are they going to run it like comprehensive health care reform? Obamacare? Federal government can't run any big program effectively or efficiently, and yet they insist that it can. These are supposed conservatives and libertarians. And you cannot compare the first 100 years of immigration in this country, when there was no welfare state, to what's going on in this country today. Milton Friedman has pointed it out, and it's a matter of logic. It's one thing for people to come here, and all they receive is the greatest gift of all, liberty. And then there's people who come here when their consulates are handing out documents about what benefits they qualify for, and special interest ethnic front groups are telling them what they qualify for, and they're getting lawyers from the Department of Justice. None of that happened in the first 100 years of this republic. Well, we've always been a nation of immigrants. That doesn't even mean anything under these circumstances. The Wall Street Journal owes the nation an apology on its editorial page. For decades, it has argued that we ought to have open borders. For decades, it has argued the Constitution should be amended with 5 words: there shall be open borders. Now, they've changed their tune a little bit. They've gone a little more underground since 9/11, because we all know if there are open borders, cities will disappear. That's no joke. Cities will disappear. So they were absurd from day one. But there's still people arguing for this stuff today. They don't live on the border. They don't work on the border. They're largely unaffected by what's going on because they're people of wealth or position. But the American people see it. The people who have to pay the property taxes for their schools, for law enforcement. The people who see emergency rooms shuttering. They see it. And it's not just on the border anymore. It's moving into the internal parts of the country. The states have been denuded of any power, when it was the states early on that almost had all the power in defining who and who could not be a citizen in their states, which is why I spent part of the first hour getting into this in the first place. Not trying to confuse you. I just think there needs to be context, and that's what we do on this show. So the notion that jurisdiction is conferred simply by birth was never the case under the 14th Amendment. That's a rather new twist in order to accommodate the political will of certain individuals and parties. And much of the change in terms of conferring benefits on illegal aliens has come not from the American people, not even from Congress, but from the Supreme Court and the lower courts. And now, with the Supreme Court's decision a few years ago conferring absolute power on Obama when it comes to immigration. And notice, that immigration power is under Article 1, Section 8. It's not under Article 2. Nonetheless, the Supreme Court granted the President of the United States virtual, open-ended power to run immigration in this country. And you see what happens in the hands of a diabolical ideologue. You see it. It's right there. Can't miss it.